Hi and Assalamualaikum. Today, our group is going to talk about the rules of law. Let's start with the introduction.
The definition of law, according to Joel's work, it may be said that the rule of law is a principle of institutional morality inherent in any constitutional democracy, and that it represents the concept of real restrictions on the scope of the state. Power must be awarded legally and must be used in accordance with the law for there to be significant restraints on the state's authority in Malaysia. Furthermore, the practical application of the rule of law would entail that all governmental entities and employees are subject to the law. As example, the government itself is subject to the law. The Federal Constitution of Malaysia is the supreme law of Malaysia, and it offers the legislative framework on which the state's organizational structure is based. In general, the Constitution design ensures that state authorities lack the authority to place restrictions on human rights according to their whims and fancies. They must be received their limitations from and be authorized by the Constitution and legislation. Human rights come naturally. Power is what calls for legal justification.
Okay, now supremacy of law. Supremacy of law is fundamental value in Malaysia, guarantee that the rule of law is upheld and that no individual or organization is above the law. So, the Federal Constitution, which acts as the supreme law of the land in Malaysia, established the idea of legal supremacy. Federal Constitution of Malaysia is a written constitution codified in a single set of paper. It to ensure and protect the people right with strictness, and the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government are established under the Constitution. Its own authority and duties governed by the Federal Constitution rules. And Malaysia legal system and English law has had impact on how Malaysia law has evolved. Malaysia legal system, a member of the common law family and borrow from Westminster tradition. Written constitution complicated the application of English administrative and constitution law notion. Supremacy of law in Malaysia served one of its primary purpose. The Constitution offers a set of rules outlining the right and obligation of both the government and the people by establishing a clear legal framework. In Malaysia, the rule of law also plays a critical role in preserving stability and order inside the nation. And Malaysia faces several difficulties in managing its diverse people because it is a multi-religious, Sikh and multiracial country.
In addition, Malaysian legal system is supreme. It aids in the nation's growth and advancement. It offers a stable, predictable climate that encourages corporate growth and draws in both domestic and foreign capital. Strong legal protections lessen the possibility of corruption and advance accountability and openness in government. As a result, the country as a whole experiences economic growth and wealth. The Constitution also offers a set of rules outlining the rights and obligations of both the government and the people by establishing a clear legal framework. This guarantees that the government acts within the bounds set forth and guards against the abuse of authority. Furthermore, because of the law's supremacy, everyone is treated equally and fairly by the law. Last but not least, political science based on ideal law. Malaysia's political science is based on the idea that the law is always absolute. It ensures that all citizens are treated equally, fosters stability and social cohesiveness, limits the power of the government, and advances the general advancement of the country. In order to promote a just and democratic society in Malaysia, it is crucial to continue defending the ideals of the supremacy of law regardless of the obstacles that must be overcome.
I will continue with example of law in Malaysia. So, example of law in Malaysia is civil law. Civil Law Act 1956 is the law that regulates the right and obligation of individual and organization in society. Civil law Act 1956 cover a wide range of topics such as contract, inheritance, lease agreement, divorce and civil crime. The purpose of civil law is to ensure that individual rights are recognized and protected and that all people are subject to the same rule. Moreover, civil law typically different from country to country, although many of the basic principles are the same. Civil law is often used in civil cases where individual or organization bring claims against other people or entities to protect their rights. So, an example of civil law is contract law. Contract law in Malaysia is a regulation governing agreement between two or more parties who mutually promise to do something or not. This relationship exists starting from the date the contract begins until its end through execution, breach of contract and others. As long as their relationship exists, the contracting parties have the responsibility to implement the contract and they also have the right to enforce it in court. In fact, contracts are something that we often do in our daily life. Any form of transaction is actually supported by contract rule. Besides that, another matter contained in civil law is real estate law. Real estate law is the main land law in Peninsular Malaysia, enforced on 1 January 1966 with the aim of standards the different land tenure and dealing system in Malaysia, especially in Peninsular Malaysia. Real estate law refers to the rule and law that govern and regulate the purchase agreement, sale, ownership right, joint ownership, real estate financing, management and possession of real estate. Divorce law is also included in the civil law in Malaysia. Divorce law in Malaysia is the law that regulates the divorce process between husband and wife. This law applies under the Marriage and Divorce Act 1976. The important thing that we should know about divorce law in Malaysia are divorce can be filed by the husband or wife for certain reasons such as fail to fulfill marital obligation, disagreement that cannot be resolved or cheating. And in the civil law, there are also have inheritance law. Inheritance law can be defined as series of legal regulation governing how a person's property will be distributed after he dies. This inheritance law vary from country to country and can be influenced by local culture, religion, and custom. Inheritance law usually include rules regarding who is entitled to receive the inheritance, how the inheritance should be distributed, and how the inheritance settlement process is carried out.
Okay, for part religious conversation law, Malaysia are famous with various race and custom that are followed to continue a perfect life, and Malaysia also have popular ethnic group such as Malay, Chinese, Indians and other communities. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, who from a Malay ethnic must strictly be a Muslim and they cannot convert to another religion. This is because Islam is the main religion in Malaysia. Hence, Islam religious practice are determined by official Sharia law. At the same time, who convert to another religion will be punished accordingly. This issue will be discussed in the High Sharia Court. Even though Malaysia has many religions, Malaysia's law has established that no one can be compelled to pay any tax related to their religion. At the same time, Malaysia's law also established that no one cannot change religion if he is below 18 years old. This is because minor needs parent permission before they convert to another religion. This only applies to another devotee other than Muslim.
So next, there are some advantages of the rules of law, which are people are entitled to fundamental liberties under the Federal Constitution, which cannot be arbitrarily restricted. The freedom of expression clause, which guarantees this, places restrictions on anything we can say. It also ensures the citizen receive equal treatment and forbids discrimination. Other than that, the strongest benefit is that a written constitution safeguards rights. The written constitution would more securely guarantee individual liberties since it would outline the relationship between the state and its inhabitants. Stability is an additional benefit. A written constitution also has the benefit of limiting government. The idea of parliamentary sovereignty would be effectively eliminated by a codified constitution. For instance, the Federal Constitution Malaysia discussed about how everyone must be equally subject to the law and society must be ruled by the law. Again, citing a few court rulings would support the idea that the Federal Constitution upholds the rule of law.
Next, we are going to talk about the disadvantages of the rules of law. Do you know that even the rules of law themselves include shortcomings? Even though it is assumed that officials and the government do not have any particular exception or legal protection, the rules of law is unable to avoid corrupt people. So, the first threat I'm going to talk about is corruption. What does this mean? Sometimes, special privileges are given to some people in position of power that protect them from prosecution. Moreover, most of the government workers now lack moral character and corrupted. They will not readily abide by the laws, and they will always figure out a method to get past them and do whatever they want. Even if the laws forbid it, they won't stop doing it. For example, try to consider a wrongdoer who buys off the judge in a case to win, or an official who gets away with something because they have immunity as they are someone with power within the government. The next issue is illiteracy. The majority of individuals now are unaware that the law is supreme. Thus, corruption may be resulted from a lack of knowledge. For example, people are unaware that they cannot sue or confront the government for breaching the law, which has caused the doctrine of law to fall apart, because its primary goal is to ensure equality between the public and the government. As a result, those who lack knowledge will pass away in quiet since they cannot successfully argue their case in court. Furthermore, because Malaysia has a codified constitution, lawsuits that involve anomalies are occasionally delayed because the legislation cannot be modified quickly. As a result, the victim would feel dejected over having been accused for too long. Lastly, the absence of patriotism. As government and the public are responsible for upholding the law, this is one of the constraints of the rule of law, because without patriotism, many citizens would attempt to break the law for ulterior motive. This is because some individuals would stand to gain from unethical government activity. People need to understand that a country cannot achieve sovereignty or peace without a constitution.
In conclusion, the rule of law is very important in every country. For the reason, with the rule of law, the safety of the people is increasingly guaranteed. Furthermore, society in Malaysia live in multi-part risk peaceful. This is because the Malaysia's government uses a systematic legal system. In the meantime, everyone ought to obey the law and no one is above the law. At the same time, the society must be governed by law and equally subject to the law. Hence, in Malaysia, have parliament to discuss any problem and to make decision in country. For instance, cabinet members present the law in parliament to get approval from prime minister after discuss. At the same time, people can continue their life in peace due to they have laws that protect them. Malaysia also can progress because the country has a society that cares for each other. In the meantime, with the rule of law can uphold justice to victims and predators. Nevertheless, the government also prioritizing the law when govern the country or making decisions based on valid law.
That is all from our group. Thank you for listening.